Hello, my statistically 99.9% nephews and my statistical outlier nieces. Your dear old Uncle Otter is back once again, and I'm selling an energy drink that can make you see emotions and turns your sweat into a thick orange goop. But if you don't want any of that, then I've got something else in my uncle's sack. Oh, what's this? Reaching around my uncle's sack. It's a bag. A brand new build featuring a new item from patch 1180. That's impossible. I thought this is only a kid's tale for dumb babies. But it is my sworn uncle duty to give you this build guide, but before I do, almost 90% of all people who watch my videos are not subscribed, and if my manager finds out, then she's gonna kill me. So do me a favor and subscribe right now. It's free, and it might save me from my evening lashing. With that being said, let's do the damn thing. Today we're diving into the brand new GaleSlice Saboteur, a pure cold melee dual wielder that can go toe to toe with other top tier builds like Acid Dervish and Pierce Physical Blade Master. With a pure cold fire strike and a litany of incredibly powerful devotion procs, your single target and AoE damage are through the roof. Thanks to the 3 different sources of fumble and aim impairment, coupled with Nightblade's innate chance to dodge, and a slew of hard and soft CC, you will have no problem with large groups of powerful enemies. For single, stronger foes like Nemesis bosses or Celestials, you have the old reliable Blast Shield as well as several sources of health sustain to allow you to stand and fight for a long time. For gear, we of course utilized the new GaleSlice's Mark. The 50% fire and chaos to cold conversion opens up a pathway for this build to truly shine and stand out among other comparable builds. The Mythical Chains of Nightfire belt will provide the missing 50% fire to cold conversion. Finally, we utilize the new Horns of Namadea, which gives us a massive chunk of flat cold damage as well as 5% physical resistance. The last piece of the puzzle are the twin blades Nex and Ortis. These swords give us a ton of damage and utility, including a powerful damage dealing proc that debuffs enemies and a massive healing proc that allows us to stay and fight easier. But the real deal here is their 2-set proc, which not only deals a huge chunk of damage but also shreds flat resistance, opening up our devotion path considerably. Speaking of, the devotions are really where we're able to get creative without sacrificing any of our upfront power. First of all, since we're a cold-based build, there are a few devotions that are must-haves. Murmur, for instance, shreds a giant pool of cold resistance from our enemies. We also rely on the cold damage scaling and powerful procs from Amatok and Leviathan. Finally, since we're a build that relies on auto-attacking, Ghoul is an absolute must-have for its incredible pseudo-circuit breaker ability. Due to the sheer amount of damage conversion to cold, the flexibility of our build truly begins to shine. I chose to pick up Eladris Phoenix, typically a Fire and Aether based constellation. However, most of the nodes scale elemental damage, which will benefit us just as much as cold damage scaling, and it also comes coupled with a massive 10% crit damage buff. The real reason to pick up this constellation is the proc, which will get converted into cold and Aether damage and provides massive flat damage absorption while active, making us even more resilient. Another interesting pick is the Guardian's Eye. Since we have 50% chaos to cold conversion on our GaleSlice's Mark and 50% poison and acid to cold on our Nex and Ortis, the proc will dish out at least half its damage as cold damage and return a decent amount of health back to us. It's worth noting that both of these constellations give us equal parts green and purple devotion, which we need 13 of both to access Leviathan. In the Nightblade tree, the most important nodes to overcap are Lethal Assault, which amps up our scaling and flat cold damage by a massive chunk every time we use Blade Burst, dual blades because physical resistance is a premium stat and scaling cold damage is always welcome, and finally Shadow Dance because it nabs us 10 defensive ability per rank, which is always a winner, and the dodge chance is a big part of our survivability. The nodes that we soft cap include Pneumatic Burst, so we can get the most out of our total speed modifier, and Night's Chill, so we can get up to 25% cold resistance reduction. Our 4 weapon pool skills stay at 6 points so we can most effectively impact their proc chance while reserving our points for more valuable skills. There are plenty of 1-point wonders in this build, so let's focus on the ones that get us some bonus utility. Blade Spirit is an incredibly potent devotion procer, but doesn't offer up too much in the way of damage. Likewise, Shadow Strike can be very powerful with proper investment, but this build is more focused on auto attacks, so we put 1 point in the whole line for a gap closer. Finally, Phantasmal Armor gives us a pretty sizable chunk of flat armor and resistances, which are both very useful as we're always in the thick of things. In the Demolitionist tree, our overcapped abilities are Flame Touched, which offers up a massive 189 offensive ability while giving us flat fire damage, which will be converted to cold damage for our build. We also put as many points as possible into Fire Strike and its modifier Brimstone in order to scale the single target and AoE damage as high as possible. We soft cap Thermal Mines to get the elemental resistance reduction as high as possible. We got our Blast Shield up to 10 points, as that is a sufficient amount of damage absorption to make us unkillable while it's active. Vindictive Flame gets as many points it needs to scale up our total speed by 15%. Finally, Flashbang is a great utility spell that shreds defensive ability and applies fumble and aim impairment to enemies, allowing you to hit harder and dodge attacks with ease. When leveling this build, I recommend using a standard Nightblade leveling build, focusing on cold and piercing auto attacks. Start with Amatra's Blade Burst and use it as your default attack and put a single point into dual blades, but don't max it out just yet. Gun it for lethal assault and max it out while putting up to 6 points into your weapon pool skills up top. Next, max out Knight's Chill for a decent amount of AoE damage and resistance reduction. Our next max out ability is Pneumatic Burst, as an on-demand heal coupled with move speed and attack speed gives us a massive mix of utility and damage. Pair this leveling build with an early Typhoon Devotion for great AoE damage and survivability. And finally, let's have a frank conversation about the power level of the build. I don't think this build is stronger than Dervish currently, but I do think it's incredibly close in terms of power and survivability. The new Saboteur is right in the ballpark of other standout melee Nightblade builds like Witch Hunter, Spellbreaker, and Blade Master, given its high damage threshold and access to Blast Shield. As of posting this video, we are capable of an 8-minute Gladiator 150 to 170 run, and a Deathless Shattered Realm 75 to 76, and I believe there's a ton of room for further optimization both in spec and playstyle.